Welcome to my basement, everybody. We've got a different kind of episode for you today because we have just announced that the classic episodes of the Electric Playground are going to start with season 1, episode 1, our very first episode from 1997 on March 23rd at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/EPNTV. They will premiere every week thereafter. And I thought it would be cool to dig into that a little bit. And I also thought it would be cool for us to find out more about our premier sponsor on this whole initiative. It's PNP Games. And I've got Lee SKWAREK, who is the promotions manager at PNP Games. I forgot one of the P's. Promotions and publicity?
Products and promotions at PNP
Products
Games.
and promotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
On March 23rd, 1997, I would have been 8 years old. I'm happy that video games are back.
Video games from an era are back, absolutely. Yes. And, this whole thing started, I wanted to get Lee on, because he's amazing, and we had a great connection right away. PNP Games was the first company that I reached out to with the idea of bringing on a sponsor on board. And I had a very specific idea of how the sponsorship was going to play out with our classic material, which we're not going to reveal. So we're not going to spoil that. You're going to see that when you start to watch the episodes. But we are going to premiere every episode every week, and we're just going to keep rolling and rolling. We have 25 seasons of Electric Playground and 14 seasons of Reviews on the Run, thousands of episodes. So we're going to be busy doing this for a long time. But every time we get these episodes out, we're going to celebrate them a little bit. I'm going to pop on the chat. Maybe sometimes Lee will be on the chat and other people from the EP community. And, who knows, I might have some guests from the different studios that we visited. We might have some co-hosts and things that, from our history pop up, to be determined. And all I know is I want to have some fun celebrating all this stuff. And this is what I relayed to Lee and to PNP. And there was this immediate connection. I think, Lee, you kind of got an idea of what I wanted to do right from the beginning, didn't you?
Yeah. So, for the longest time, some of EP was available on YouTube, watched it there, obviously grew up with the show, as most people watching this would have. Bought a pair of rabbit ear antennas from my flea market so that I could use my TV VCR combo to record EP while I was at skating lessons.
Holy crap.
And yeah, this is like little Canadian anecdote there, but I'm here because of EP and Victor Lucas, but I'm here specifically because of fans of PNP Games, making sure that they tagged us in that post of yours, basically saying, hey, I'm looking for someone in the retro gaming space to kind of do this with. And kind of just cold dropped you a message, and the rest is now history. The Electric Playground means so much to so many people in this industry in all facets. And yes, I come from retail, let's say. So some of the things I speak of will be guarded trade secrets that I won't get too much in. So let's focus on the promotions, as it were. But yeah, the office is just a buzz. If you know the Electric Playground, you know how important it is, and you know that nothing quite existed like it for such a long time. And now hereafter, nothing really celebrated and gave us a look at gaming, like from go. Just the terminology being used, the fact that you would come to the show being like, how long has this show been airing? They're talking to me about stuff I understand, about like, I'm going to see these games being made before they're out. I'm going to hear opinions on games, hot takes. Just didn't exist. Nothing else existed like it. So when you kind of pitched what you wanted to do with these classic episodes, and I kind of brought it to the brass at PNP, there wasn't a lot of convincing. Like, it kind of speaks for itself.
That's awesome.
And your body of work. So,
well,
yes,
and that's
absolutely.
and that's what I felt in communicating with you. And that, honestly, that's exactly what I dreamed, is a partnership like this where there's as much respect for the history of the medium and appreciation for the fun of it all. And, an acknowledgement, I think, from both of us that this stuff should be kind of preserved and celebrated and shared, and people should, reflect on that and check it out. But I think also see how it was done and how it's shaped how games get made today. And it all informs everything that we're in, like even the first 3D stuff. And this is stuff that we used to talk about on Reviews on the Run back in the day. It's like the way that games were made initially in 3D were taking ideas and core fundamental design elements from the 2D stuff that the 2D developers really kind of perfected along the way. And you could feel that sort of stacking on shoulders and this kind of regular borrowing of ideas and melding and manipulating and constantly evolving all of these concepts. And so it's really cool to dig into this material. And, right from the get-go, we knew it was important to go and visit these people. We knew that to make EP a different show than what many people would think of as a video game show, our differentiator was that no, we were going to spend all of our production budgets to go to these studios and meet these people and get them on camera, sometimes against their will. But then they started to see the show and how we did these conversations. And I think, yeah, and what I would tell developers, it's like, look, if you guys don't like the show, then we failed. If you guys don't enjoy what we're putting together, then why are we doing this? This is to honor your work. This is why we're doing it. It's so people get to know who you are and how this stuff gets made and where it gets made. And that first season was so, clumsy, and we were figuring it out as we were, going along. You can kind of see that in the pieces that we were putting together. But by the time some of that started to filter out there, and we'd send tapes to different companies and different people to kind of show what we were doing, there was a rhythm and an awareness and a trust that we kind of built up. And
there's such a level of personality, I think,
yep.
too, is that it was kind of up to the devs if they wanted to ham it up. It seemed like they were just kind of told, we'll film it and see what happens. And then like some of that stuff gets into the show. And then other people just want a straight-laced interview. You get Ken Lobb on camera, he's just going to tell you, this is why Diddy Kong Racing isn't a clone of Mario Kart, and stuff like that. Just great. And the ebb and flow of it, the personality behind each of these studios or whoever is talking, just the roller coaster ride of it, I think is just so fun that some people are a little more reserved. You're not going to get a rise out of a John Romero, for example. He's just
no.
And stuff
well,
like
part
that.
of it too was like I was brand new with this too, and part of it was like I was new and I was figuring out how to be an interviewer. And you can tell, like I called myself a cub reporter in that first season. I didn't really see myself as the host of the show, as the person kind of front. I saw myself as the director and the producer, the person behind the camera, funneling the honest curiosity and sort of representing the viewer in that way to try to get to the core of what all this stuff was. And I was trying to make people feel comfortable and giving other people the opportunity to kind of have some fun and some levity. And it took me a couple of seasons to start to feel real, like I owned that space, like I had a real opportunity and a responsibility there. And it came from love, but I was also unsure and nervous and I knew what I knew about games would translate in the show, and my natural curiosity would come through in those conversations and those pieces that we came together. But it took me a little while to kind of recognize that I had value as a host, and so when I would meet like a John Romero, I would be totally intimidated, or John Carmack especially was just a brilliant, brilliant human being, and to sit down and have a conversation with these guys that just, I don't know, could see, I always thought of like they could see the matrix code behind the world, they could see how everything ran all the time.
And you're talking to Carmack, but he's thinking about how to fix screen tearing or something like that. He's just like, hold on a second. I just had a breakthrough. I need to go type some code up. How much were those guys being interviewed back then, though? Like magazines, obviously, but a TV interview or even a behind the scenes interview, not a lot, right? So
no,
I think it went both ways.
Not a lot. Yeah, totally. And there were many, many people that we communicated with that were very nervous. And we were put a lot of people on camera for the very first time. And I learned a language with them to try to help everybody just be calm and have some fun with it. And there were also many times too where I would work with PR firms and or PR people internal at some of these studios and calm them down about their concerns about us wanting to get a little bit crazier with a piece, and that wasn't something that we knew right away. Like our first season, we weren't getting right into lightsaber battles and stuff like that. We weren't throwing lasers everywhere and exploding cars and buildings. It took us a little while to kind of understand how we could incorporate that into the show and actually physically do it. And we had this fantastic art director that was a part of almost everything that we did, Tavis Dunn. And we would throw these wacky ideas at him and he would build them first with graphic overlays and getting sort of textual information embedded in the content and things that would pop up and stuff to reinforce ideas. And then later on it's like, yeah, we're gonna do a spy hunter thing and have an ejection seat in the middle of the interview, and Tavis would have to figure it all out. And Aaron Moody, who started with us as a regular editor and then became the post production supervising producer, would just take all of these elements together and blend them together and like sweeten them with great audio. And we had great audio people working on the show as well. But and also we worked with the game companies, and sometimes they would send us actual 3D models and assets and things from games, and we'd employ them in our visual effects and stuff. But it took us a little while before we did that. And there were many times where I had to say, look, we can do this with the person we're going to interview in front of a television, and we'll have footage of your logo or your gameplay or whatever. And that'll look all right. That'll look good. We'll frame it and light it and we'll do our best to make it look really nice. But people will remember if in the middle of this, a chainsaw comes out and we cut you in half. They're going to remember that piece.
Yeah. It would be better. We're going to sweeten it up. Yeah.
But I think we would have exhausted it if every piece was like that. So it's interesting that you saw these, you're looking through these classic episodes right now, and you could see that there was value in going in one direction and then spicing it up in another direction.
It's been my privilege to kind of look through some of the stuff, and I haven't gone through what's there yet, but this could segue nicely. One of the questions I did see in the discourse of the announcement was, what's the quality going to be like on these 1997 4x3 episodes? And I mean, looks good to me, but compared to what was there before, I think people are going to be really pleased with what they see there in terms of the quality of the clips.
We're working with the University of Toronto Mississauga. They're the school that we've given them an educational license to all of this content. So if you go to their game studies course at the school, you'll have access to our complete library of episodes and all of our raw material and all of that stuff. And so students can dig into this history, which I think is really, really freaking cool. They're great people. We went out last year to celebrate a little bit of the launch of this. It's paired with the Sid Bolton collection, and Sid Bolton had he was an incredible guy that collected the PC Museum and the video game, biggest collection of video games in Canada. I don't know if you ever worked with him or got to meet him, but an amazing person. But they now have this massive physical library of all of these games, and they have our physical tapes and physical discs and all the different formats that we used over our period. So what they're doing is they're digitizing it to preserve it for their school and for their students and for his history, basically, at 4K resolution. And so they're sending me the 4K dubs. So they're up-resing everything because we weren't shooting in 4K back then. The best the best resolution that we had was whatever Betacam SP could kind of shoot at. And then we got into XD Cam and DVC Pro 50. We had a whole bunch, like not only the history of video games, we're like the history of video formats going from analog to digital in broadcast before everything became an SD card. And it'll probably be crystals in the future, but they're digitizing everything, and they're sending me 4K masters. And I'm saying that in quotes because obviously this is up-res material, but it's going to look cleaner. It's going to be in the right aspect ratio, and it will be at 60 frames per second, which I know some people have been questioning about that. but these shows are going to look the best they've ever looked on YouTube. And that was another reason why I wanted to put this together properly. The other thing that we did when we put them on YouTube initially, it was a little haphazard, and we didn't really have, and I don't profess to be an expert at thumbnails or anything like that. You know, the thumbnails is like a science. But I didn't have the experience that I've picked up along the way since then. And I've gotten better with thumbnails and better with kind of letting people know what's in the content. So that's the other part of this equation as well, is that it'll look kind of you'll know what it looks like. And I haven't determined exactly what that is, but you'll know kind of what you're getting, and that it's EP and it's classic. And so the thumbnails will be cleaner. The descriptions of what's in the show will be cleaner. There'll be some timestamps and stuff in there as well. And so people will be able to kind of check all that out. And then once that's up there, we can do some fun things with maybe some cut downs every once in a while on some of the TikToks and Instagrams and stuff like that.
Sure. You were saying you have a lot of extended cuts. You have a lot of content. You know, there's only so much of it in these episodes, but there could
Yes.
be, there could be 20 minutes of an interview versus three, that person might be interested in seeing, and that other people might, in fact, be interested in seeing.
Well,
Yeah,
that's definitely coming. But I think to be fair to the work that our whole team did, we kind of have to get through the episodes before we get into the extended cuts.
sure.
But I definitely want to do that as well. And I think what we're doing here is we're starting this initiative, and I don't know if there's an ending. Like we're going to keep going, and eventually all of that material is going to be up there. And we've got other shows as well. Reviews on the Run content is going to be up there, and
Mhm.
um, there's documentaries and the art of play, and these other things that our production company was responsible for. I eventually want to get it all up there and searchable, and there might be some changes in how we serve it up, because I don't know how YouTube is going to change along with us as well. They're constantly evolving and growing. There might be
Yeah,
other distribution partnerships that we work out as well. There might be like a media organization or some kind of broadcaster or something that reaches out and says, we want to partner with you guys. I don't know, but I felt like all we could do was look at what we have currently and create this stream for people. And you guys understood that. You guys saw that there
we
was an opportunity to do that. And we're going to do something fun with your integration in here, but I don't want to spoil that.
sure.
I want people to kind of experience that.
For sure, yeah. It's going to be it's as you say, it's singular, it's unique, it's dare I say Canadian. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're in for a treat. Like from that first episode, you have Atlanta, you have E3, the buzz on the floor. You have PlayStation straight up saying we are better than Sega and Nintendo, which is something that does not happen anymore. No one,
Steve
no,
Race.
yeah, it's all pulled punches now. And then you left it all in the show is just so good. It was a different time, man. It was a different form of tribalism in the console wars back then. But
Well,
it's
you
just
know what's cool
fascinating.
though, Lee, and why I wanted to go this route with a company that can, speaks to the fandom and the desire to play the classic stuff. I saw, because we've had different partners, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody that we've ever worked with. That every partner along the way has helped us to build this show and get it out to people, and get these shows and get them out to people. But I thought about, some of the corporate directions that we could have gone around this, and I thought, no, this really needs to be partnered with a company that caters to fans of classic material and has a real appreciation and understanding. And when EP started, that wasn't there. That didn't really exist. It was, it was just big game stores, and since I would say like the early 2000s or something, it feels like there's been this whole new marketplace out there, understanding that there's tremendous amount of value, not just in the disc-based systems, but going back to the old classic cartridges and finding
For
those old
sure.
consoles and stuff. And that's what I thought would be a perfect marriage around the show. And I want to find out. Actually, I wanted to have you on because I don't know a
Sure.
ton of. I haven't been to. I've been to Winnipeg like once in my life, so I don't really know too much about PNP. Why don't you tell us a little bit of the history of the store? How did PNP come
Absolutely.
together?
Yeah, so PNP Games started as an operation out of a basement, much like the one we are both in now,
I'm good with
separately.
basements.
But yeah, absolutely, they're cool. So it started as just a shipping of retro products and stuff like that, and grew from there into an office and a storefront in Winnipeg. We now
What
have three
what year
retail
was
stores in
that?
Winnipeg. That
What
would have
year
been
was that?
2007,
Okay.
and I came on in 2009. So I've been with PNP Games for
Wow.
15 years myself,
That's
starting
awesome.
as a driver and in-store employee and stuff like that. And the store kind of opened. So like in 2007, think like Call of Duty 4. Think about like the height of game trailers. Think about Screw Track, AVGN. There was a
Yep.
weird different renaissance of video games and video game content at that time, that while was looking back in a in a comedy way, was looking forward at something like COD 4 dropping and literally changing how yearly AAA video games were going to be kind of looked at for the next
Totally.
so many years.
Yeah.
And that's when I really got into video games. So I was coming out of university where I didn't complete anything, and saw that PB Games was, kicking, starting up, and was the independent retailer in Winnipeg, and just kind of got that job there while amassing my own collection of video games that really doesn't exist any longer. But as PNP Games grew, as you know, we have three stores now in Winnipeg. We sell on a very robust web store, pnpgamesonline.com, as well as third party sellers and stuff like that. The As an independent, um, there's just so much value into putting time in to do so many different things. I'm doing 8 different things versus learning one thing and being in that
Yes.
in that one lane, as you can attest to starting EP.
Yep.
There's a lot of parallels there in that you will work harder, but you will learn that much more. You'll get that much more out of that time until you're literally sitting in your basement talking to Victor Lucas on a podcast. Anything
Who's
is
in his
possible.
basement?
Yeah, who's in his basement? Then you know you've made it. I was joking before I came on. I was going to introduce myself as like the least consequential guest ever on the Vic's Basement podcast, but
No, that is bullshit.
it's
You guys are supporting the
uh,
relaunch of our classic content in a real way. And that story is incredibly, inspiring. And it's so true that the more kinds of things that you can have responsibility for, yes, it kind of stretches you out, and sometimes it's really,
yeah,
really frustrating. I feel that today, man. I've been editing
yeah,
my own stuff for the last several years since the start of the pandemic, and that was a daunting thing. Just even
yes,
streaming was a daunting thing for me because I'd done so many years of working with a team, and they edit me to sound smarter than I am and make me look better than I am, and then they put it all together and package it in a show, and then I'm gonna literally stream myself playing a video game. What if I suck? What if I'm terrible? How can I speak and play a game at the same time?
been a
And
sham this whole time. You're actually bad at video games.
all right, well, I'm good at I'm okay at a lot of video games. I'm not
Yeah,
great at tons of them, but I think challenging yourself and trying all these different things is really rewarding as well. Like you can sort of finish a workday and go, man, I touched a lot of stuff and I made a lot of things happen. And I think that's kind of the Canadian way in a lot of ways. It's definitely the Canadian way in media. That's the way that people are being trained right now to go and shoot and produce and edit and do all of their own stuff these days.
mhm,
It's the way of YouTube, and I think people there's a lot of jobs like that. There's a lot of like, you can look at Uber and all kinds of different things where you are just tasked with managing it all and running your own business within a business. And I kind of did that as a waiter, honestly. That was really great training for me because you're really kind of left to your own devices to build your own brand in an opportunity like that. And if you
mhm.
give people a good experience, then you make more money. And it comes down to that. But that the smiles when I was a waiter, people having a great night was incredibly rewarding, and it gave me a lot of confidence to be able to go and communicate with anybody and sit down
Absolutely.
and just be upfront and straightforward about what this is all going to be. And I get that from you, Lee. I really do.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I think it's
Yeah,
because you get all of these different opportunities to connect with people and all these different jobs and all of these. I'm sure lots of other people that you have to collaborate and work with, that they need to be okay and satisfied as well. And you're building in
I
a common direction.
a big subscriber that everybody should work in the service industry. Just in it, there should be a mandated
Yes.
1 to 2 years
Yep.
of service industry.
Yep.
And that's, I'll say that's kind of where it comes from. But when you're in an independent game store, you get to talk with people about video games, 8 hours a day. They're coming in, they're talking about something. The more I know about especially in a retro game store, the
Yeah.
advantage is how much do you know? Can you pick up on what the person is laying down and immediately strike up that conversation with them? They're going to come in and they're going to say, it's an NES game with a bird flying around a mountain. And I'm like, 8 eyes. That's what it is. It's right here. And it's, those
That's awesome.
interactions, are invaluable. And when we went to do this, I know not only to the employees at PNP Games, but all those people I've talked to over all these years working in stores, and them talking about, their gaming collections or like what they used to play or just the nostalgia of walking into a place that still sells those things. Electric Playground's part of that. It's a part of video games. And to be able to do something like this and bring it back to those people is like in terms of my legacy at PNP Games, we've done a lot of stuff. We've done a lot of crazy stuff for an independent. Like I said, I say it as a joke, being the most inconsequential person in the room, but we've gotten to go to E3. I've gotten to talk
Yeah.
to developers that are there thinking that they're just on the side to sell the thing. So they're talking about Rock Band because they're trying to sell the guitars. But hey, I'm alone with a harmonics employee. I've got questions as a fan for them, and I'm just going to go for it.
Right
And
on.
that's kind of my mentality with all of this. When someone tells you, "Hey, Victor Lucas is looking for a retro game store," it's why not us? Like we understand the passion, we understand what it means to people. If this can work, why can't it? And that's kind of PNP Games in a nutshell, I guess. Really, is just like we're
That's
here.
EP in a nutshell, man.
Yeah,
That
we're
is,
gonna be part of it.
and I
Yeah,
don't know if it's the Canadian kind of motto or the Canadian kind of way of thinking, but that's absolutely what it was. It's like having uh, having the ambition and the drive to pull it off, and figuring a way through the self-doubt and all of the different things, and just hoping for the best, and really kind of I think working with the goodwill of others. And the beautiful thing about the video game industry, and actually I've got a question here. I pulled
sure.
together some of the questions off of Twitter and stuff, and one of them actually was a great question from Michelle Goodkin, who says, "How did you break down the door back in the day and get those interviews?" I'm talking the '90s, and it was a different path. It wasn't like there weren't a lot of other groups that were trying to do that. I think that we inspired other groups to try to do what we were doing, but
Sure.
I knew just from reading, because I was a rabid collector of all the magazines from the '80s and the '90s. I got them all every month. I was spending a
Oh
fortune
no,
on games
thought your
and all the
garage was finally
magazines.
cleaned out.
Yeah, no. And so I would read them all, and I would take those magazines into meetings with broadcasters. I would say, look, there's like 30 magazines a month coming out here about this medium, and there are no television shows. But I knew that right from the first thing I did was wrote a 3-page pitch document. I boiled it down. I had it in my mind that if I was going to explain what Electric Playground is, it had to be quick. It had to be very clear. It had to be illuminated uh, cleanly in a very easy to understand thing. And so a 3-page piece of a 3-page document, and I faxed it to people that I started to get to know in the video game industry. David Perry actually wrote an article in issue 2 of Next Generation magazine in 1995, talking about the fact that there are channels on television, not just shows, about all kinds of topics. And he pointed out the Golf Channel there's a whole channel about golf, but there are no shows really digging into how video games get made and the culture around gaming. And I wrote him an email, or I might have faxed him a letter because it was a different time.
As was the thing you did back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got my first email address in 1995, and I was pitching the show right around that time. So, and his response to me, and he did reply, as I sent him a letter and I said, I just read your article. I'm pitching this idea about the electric playground. I sent him down the 3-page document. And he got it right away, and he wrote me back a letter saying, "Yeah, this sounds incredible. Electric Playground's invited to Shiny Entertainment." And
Wow.
then, things like that started to snowball. I talked to some local TV producers in Vancouver because that's where I'm based, and there was production here. And that gets super complicated, but I got some advice there and some wisdom there. Started to kind of figure out some connections for some broadcasters. But the first thing that we really did, I had this opportunity to spend some money in 1995 to partner with a production company, and the production company had an established name out there, and they wanted to partner with us, but they said, if you will pay us $5,000 to show how committed you are, we'll bring you in the fold and we'll help to put the pitch together and
Yeah.
the video content together, and we'll go out there with you. And I thought about that, but we want 50% of your, or it might have even been 60% of whatever happens with Electric Playground. And I thought about it, and I said, nope, no thanks. And so we scraped together the money to go to E3 in 1995. And we spent that $5,000 that we would have spent on that idea and going with them on our own, broadcast team going around. I think we could only afford 1 day or 2 days. And we just set up interviews and we set up meetings at the very first E3. And I met David Perry for the first time there. I met Tommy for the first time there. I met Ed Boon and John Tobias there. I met George Lucas there. I was at the Sony PlayStation party, and Michael Jackson showed up there. Met Jeff Keighley, I'm sure, back then, and Jeff Gertzman, and a few
All the
other
Jeffs.
people.
Yeah.
And, yeah, lots of people from all of these different companies. And that face-to-face kind of connection was incredibly important and incredibly valuable. And we just let people know that the idea was to come and visit them, was to come to your studios and to make this content with them. And of course, it took, it wasn't like we were ready to roll right after that E3. It took some more pitching and meeting and lots of, trying to figure it out. Nothing was easy back then. And we didn't have the communication technologies back then either. We didn't have, smartphones in our pockets all the time. And it was like,
It's like,
hardwired phones calling everybody.
yeah, like I've been to E3 in the age of the cell phone. So it's like, let's meet for lunch. Where are
Yeah,
you? Now imagine you don't have that, and there's
yeah,
tens of thousands of people on a show floor with the loudest music you've ever heard in your life,
totally.
and you just want lunch.
Yeah, no, it
It's
was
yeah,
it was it was crazy. At that first E3 though, I think the New York Daily News did an article about the explosion of video games, and then they did
nice.
an interview with me talking about me pitching the Electric Playground as a weekly television show, and they put me in the paper. And I remember people from Acclaim had read the paper, and they said, "Look, you're in there." And I'm like, "Holy crap, that's so cool!" And yeah, I met tons of people, but one of the things that sticks out around those meetings, I met a guy that was running the Sega PR at the time. I've forgotten his name right now. I'd have to dig into my notes, but he said, "I like you guys. You do exactly what you say you're going to do." And that that became kind of the motto for what EP was. That became like a principle of what our company was. Like, we did have big ambitions, and like it was a big deal to pile people into a van or something and then drive, because in the early days we didn't fly everywhere. We'd actually drove down the coast and on the
Sure.
West Coast, and we'd stop off at studios along the way, and we'd stay in motels and share rooms and eat at Taco Bell. Like, we didn't have huge per diems or anything like that. Um, but we said we would show up, and we'd show up, and we'd shoot this stuff, and we'd make a segment that we hit our sort of expectations and over delivered, and then we'd send everybody a tape, and they would start to see all of that stuff. And also the video game industry, I think, was very open to the idea of of content that celebrated them in a different way, that celebrated them from the inside out and on a regular basis. Because I think there had been sporadic pieces and visits from news. And, I know there were some UK based shows and some Japanese based shows that would get into studios every once in a while, but they didn't really have. I pitched it as an Entertainment Tonight meets Siskel and Ebert for video games, which
Yeah,
are,
that's
two names
really
you probably don't
accurate.
even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, no, no. That's come on now. I was 8. I wasn't nothing. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
people saw that, and what I saw with Siskel and Ebert was that the best stuff in Siskel and Ebert was when they were off script. Like they did all of their communicating about what the movie was about and who directed it and cinematography and all that. And then they'd go back and forth and have an off script, what did you mean you didn't like that? And I no, but I like that. And I was like, you know what? If we don't script our reviews and we just have a conversation and, it's the whole run on Reviews on the Run we never talked about what we were going to talk about before we went on
Sure.
camera. So we'd hit record not knowing what the other person was going to say. And it was just an honest kind of thing right from the get go. But to answer Michelle's,
Yeah,
that was a very long, convoluted path. But to answer
we
Michelle's
got there.
thing, the video game community, I think, was open to this kind of regular coverage. And we just did our best to deliver on what we promised and what we're pitching people. And so we built these friendships. I think that's what it is we built these relationships and that trust. And I was there physically talking to these developers. I wasn't just a producer back in Vancouver. I was there with them, telling them and reinforcing, like, if you don't like the show, why are we doing it? And San Francisco actually was one of our first markets. We launched in September of 1997 on a market called KBHK, and Drew Carey was on the cover of the TV Guide, which I picked up. But we rated really well in San Francisco. So,
Yeah.
and at that time, San Francisco was like the key home for the video game industry. Everybody was there. Sega was there, and Crystal Dynamics was publishing their own games, and Konami. Everybody had head offices in San Francisco, so I know that the community in San Francisco watched this crazy show, and the station was really happy. They were a UPN affiliate, and so yeah, that's what we did. We just built this rapport with the community, and even though we were kind of isolated and apart from a big chunk of the game development community in Vancouver, there was the local scene here, but a lot of it was on the road. We did our best to get out and physically meet with everybody, and we did our best to stay in constant contact with everybody, and just built friendships. And that's how they let us in to do all of that stuff. And I'm sure that's the same with you guys, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's talking to different people, not necessarily approaching the publishers and developers directly, but there's all the people who work on our side of the industry too, that are the
Yeah.
same people that have been there for a while that you've built rapport with. They move on to other places and you find them over there, and now suddenly you have a foot in somewhere you didn't before. That might only apply to indies, of course, but it's so very interesting that this industry is massive, but also it's this big
Yes.
once you start to get to know people. And that's from my point of view, nobody. But it's so neat that, yeah, like watching some of these early episodes and stuff like this, just like why wouldn't you want to be on the show? Like the way it's presented, the way, like I said, going back to the personality of it, all the cutaways, the way it's put together is just like you'd be chomping at the bit to be on this show. Like, look how cool this is. You're on TV, like I don't know, man. It's crazy. Going back to what you were saying there about you were, investing in yourself. Basically, you're deciding instead of giving 5,000 to these people, that could very
Yeah.
well get me where I want to go. I think I can get there on my own. And nowadays, there's something that we call imposter syndrome or whatever that when you
Yeah.
stop and think about it for a second and you're like,
Yeah.
why me? Why me here? Why should it be me doing this in a basement talking to Victor Lucas on a podcast?
Oh, come on.
And I very much, no, I know. That's the last self defaming thing. So the way I very much understand just recently, like I've been with PNP for so long, I have been the face of the social media locally. I do a lot of radio. If they need someone to interview on the TV, the Switch just came out. Let's play 1-2 Switch with the TV host. Get Lee from PNP. He'll do it.
That's
I
great.
love that kind of stuff and just find it a lot of fun. But when it comes to something bigger, like say this, there are those moments where you're just like, man, and you got to just put them away and just keep working. And I think that's something that's been instilled with me as an independent, and something that, thankfully you had that in you back then to not give up on your own view of what it is, because who knows what it would have been if you
Yeah.
had someone else being like, yeah, this, what you're doing is great and all, but these guys are coming at us with a little of this, and they should be a bigger feature at all times, or let's not
Yeah.
include those guys. And that's always something I've been kind of curious of, because you have everybody together here.
Yep. Yep.
You have all the publishers together in
Yep.
EP, and no
Incredibly
one's, like I said,
important.
yeah, nobody's
And
pulling punches. Yeah,
yeah, we never pull punches on our reviews. It was in all our contracts that the reviews are our opinion, and they're not for sale. And that's the way it always has been. And I've had publishers say, of course, we want that, because you're not, what service are you providing if you're not being honest with this? We learn from where we make mistakes too. And they're very upfront. I've only had a couple of developers ever reach out to me pissed off, or a couple of uncomfortable meetings about review scores. For the most part, everybody has understood. Even when I've had co-hosts where, their discrepancy or their score is very much lower than mine, and they're like,
sure. Yeah,
what's happening here? And what I push back on specific to review scores, it's like everybody's got a point of view out there, and those points of view are a divining rod for part of the audience out there. There's people that fully are in sync with that person and their perspective, and they represent that group of people. And that's what this is about. It's like reaching up beyond the echo chamber and talking to a lot of different people. Our whole thing from the beginning was, let's include people, let's not exclude people. And we learned a lot along the way of how to bring this out to more people, and to raise all the boats with the type of content that we were doing. Because when we started as a weekly show, it was very, very, very focused on just games. And we grew to talking about a lot of other entertainment that gamers we knew were going to like. And all of it was from the prism of a game fan. Would a game fan dig our, access to the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something like that as it was launching? And it turned out they did. I didn't know. It's just like I didn't know if EP was going to work, really. Like, I had a feeling that it would. I felt like if I was this curious about this world, that there would be thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people that would be as well. But I didn't know. I didn't know when we started if we should have been a cable access show, or if we should have been a network show or a syndicated show. Turned out we had to do all of those different things. But one of the great things that happened through this perseverance and sort of figuring out all of the different permutations of how we got the money in to make the show. We partnered with Discovery Science for season 6 and 7, and they broadcast on their networks, and that's a whole other story. We can maybe do this on a regular basis and talk about each of these different seasons as we kind of get through them. But we were on 6 and 7 on Discovery Science, and our executive producer at the network, her name is Susan Norton. We had such a immediacy and this shorthand kind of discussion in the content, because we'd already done 5 seasons of EP. So we had this rapport with our established audience, but we were getting into a whole brand new audience in the US here with those 2 seasons. And we had to slow down. She said, what are you guys doing? You're just like whipping through all of these terms. You're just jumping into all of this stuff. And there's going to be people that are going to be super fans of this stuff, and they're going to know, but there's also going to be a lot of people that are like, what are they saying? What are these human beings talking to me about right now?
Yeah, that was my note. Is like the first time I saw Electric Playground, though, it was like, no, the conversation's already happening. If you need to catch up, they don't need to catch you up, right? So if you're into gaming, watch this, and you're gonna your vernacular of gaming is going to expand. Your idea of how games are made is going to immediately expand.
Right.
Like you're looking through the window, right? You're like, oh man, like I never even considered. I think that's part of it. I think that's part of why it's cool, is that it's not.
Well, and what we tried to do was, what we tried to do is like take that note in, but find a way to slow down and also fill the time with something valuable. And so we did things like these game job segments where we actually got a specific person to kind of host their piece on a team, maybe they're a texture, artist, or they're
Sure.
an animator, and they're talking about the bones that they have to animate with,
Yep.
and the keyframes and all that stuff. And so we slow down, we pop up little textual pieces to kind of underline. All of this sounds incredibly, archaic at this point, like
Sure.
of
Yeah.
course we're doing, but we were doing this work for the very first time. Us too. Like we were figuring it out, and you can see that. But yeah, definitely. Um, I felt imposter syndrome. You know what I felt, and I still feel, and I feel every freaking day, is just immense gratitude. I had a dream realized. I had an idea for a show called the Electric Playground, and that name took me 100 different derivations. I came up with tons of different ways to what am I going to call this, and I specifically called it the Electric Playground because I had this idea that maybe it's going to be about games, but more, and it ended up doing that. I was so freaking happy, and I remember walking home from our studio in Yaletown, and we were editing at night because we had partners back then that gave us the night shift. So from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., we could be in the
Awesome.
suites
Yeah.
editing the content. So I'd stay up all day, calling companies and figuring out where we were going to be and getting assets because we were always waiting on tapes. There were no, 4K digital file, just pull it off
Yeah, I was gonna.
Dropbox kind of things
So
back
when you
then.
say editing, now for the kids out there, when you say
Yeah.
editing, you're not talking
Yeah.
about sitting on a laptop with Adobe Premiere,
No,
editing a beta tape
no,
together. Were you split? Like, were you slicing film together, or were you like
no,
literally?
no, not film. No, no.
Yeah.
We had
Okay.
Avids. We were on Avid
Okay.
systems. We've done it on
So
all
you had like two
platforms out there.
machines you were
Yeah, but
editing
we had
across.
what
Okay.
was called an offline system, and we bought
Yeah.
a $40,000 Avid piece of crap system that was already like 5 or 6 years old to offline to sort of take the raw footage in, and then we had an online system that we could only rent. We couldn't afford to own that because it was like a
Wow.
few hundred
Yeah.
thousand dollars worth of stuff, and that's where you would put all your effects and all of the nice transitional elements and the audio and all that stuff, all the sweetening basically, and then you could output from that online space. And so we had our own Avid 2 offline on, but then you have to remember that every tape had to be ingested in real time, right? So a 30-minute tape, like for one interview, say, all of that's 30 minutes of the day to get ingested into a system, and then there's tons of them you know that all have
Times
to
how
get
many
put
you
in, all
did.
the
Yeah.
b-roll,
Yeah.
all of that, and in real time, and then you can start to
Really
piece
good.
your clips together.
Yeah.
And then you take the edit decision list and you stick that into the online thing, and it pulls the specific moments on this analog tape that is winding its way to that specific moment, and then it ingests that in real
Yeah.
time. So all of it was painstaking, and it took a week basically to online offline the show, and then a week to online the show. And anyways, after one of those nights, must have been like early, like first episode or the second episode, I was walking home and I just thought, I'm on top of the world, man. I was
Doing
on the
it.
Burrard
Yep.
Bridge heading to my place, and the sun was coming up. I'm like, holy crap, man. We're on TV. I cannot
Yeah.
freaking believe it. And so my journey has been that the whole way. I cannot believe the opportunities that I've been gifted, and I'm so freaking grateful. And there were levels of gratefulness that started to happen when we were able to grow, and I was able to share a lot of those opportunities with different people, and to see them posting on their social media about going to an event and wherever, like Marissa went to the Game of Thrones set and was on
Sure.
location behind working with HBO. And it's like, yeah, man, like this is incredible. Like we pulled off something just sensational. I remember we were at Comic-Con one year, and we had three or four different teams. And this was, I think, for Avengers Age of Ultron was launching. And we were on the red carpet at Comic-Con with an EP flag and a Reviews on the Run flag. I just said, well, looks like we have two different shows. Why don't we just go to two
One
different
flag,
parts of
save
the,
money.
yeah, yeah, we'll get a
Or
couple of,
yeah, you could
but
you could split. Yeah, divide and
yeah.
conquer.
And we got it, and we met everybody. We met all the Avengers and got them on screen, and
Nice.
it's like, how did this happen? These are the biggest stars in the world for the biggest property on Earth, and here they are in our little shows that started, not kind of like this, in my basement
Yeah.
years and years ago, and it's all blown me away. But
From
I do have
basements,
a
great things come. Yeah.
absolutely, and garages and
Yeah.
you know oh man, I have so much wisdom to share on all of that. But I have this one nugget of wisdom around imposter syndrome, and I'll never
There it
forget
is.
it. And I don't know if I can properly convey this, but I've been a huge fan of escapism, obviously, for my whole
Mhm.
life. And James Bond is one of my favorite properties. I saw Spy Who Loved Me when I was like 9 years old or something like that in the theater. And I've just loved that world. And Pierce Brosnan obviously meant a lot to us James Bond fanatics. GoldenEye,
Oh yeah.
one of the best Bond movies and one of the best Bond video games. I saw Pierce Brosnan on The Tonight Show or something like that. This hit home so profoundly for me. But I saw him in an interview just being a human being and stumbling and not being cool and being embarrassed and awkward
The
and saying
opposite
the
of
wrong
James
thing.
Bond.
He was not James Bond.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
not as cool as James Bond. He didn't know what to say in that moment. He didn't come off as cool. He was quite dull in that interview, I can recall. And I thought, holy shit, this guy, he's just like us. He's just a human being. And up until that time, you have this, the grass is always greener. You look at everybody and you go, I want that. I want to be like that. I want to be as cool as this. But what we're presented through media is the best distillation of that. It is a collaborative vision that shapes that person or that moment on screen. It isn't that human. And when I saw Pierce Brosnan, who seems like a wonderful human, truly, and he just seems like he's gotten better and cooler with age. But when I saw Pierce in that moment, I thought he is just as geeky as everybody. We're all geeks. We're all freaking nerds trying to figure this out. None of us is as cool as what is projected back at us. And that gave me so much freaking confidence to walk
Interesting.
into any situation, to interview anyone. And sure, I get nervous and I stumble and I say the wrong thing, or I beat myself up afterwards for sure. But I also know that my place in context has as much value as anybody else's. And that gave me a lot of strength. And so if anybody that's listening to this can hear that, like you have so much value, and your ideas and your wisdom and your perspective and your point of view and what you contribute to the world has so much value. You existing has so much value. So, believe in that, and you can build what you put your mind to. You really can do that. I grew up on welfare. My mom had no money, and I didn't have she was a single parent. I didn't have anybody showing me how to do this. I wanted to be an actor. I was starting to get work as an actor, and then I thought, I love video games. There's an opportunity to build something in this direction, and you can do it, man. I just listened to this fantastic interview on the Kara Swisher podcast. I think it's called On, where she interviewed Cord Jefferson, who is the writer director, Academy Award nominated writer director for American Fiction, which I sadly haven't seen the movie yet. But he was a journalist and he'd never written or directed his own movie. Jeffrey Wright's in it. Apparently, it's incredible. I'm beating myself up that I haven't seen it, but his story is so inspiring. It's like honestly, just project and get yourself going in that direction, and it'll happen. So when you say that you're just a nobody, or that
Oh well, like you said
give me
something
a
really
break.
in the midst there when you said like when in context, and that's the thing I always think about is just like, well, it's not just me that's bringing back classic episodes of EP. Someone else would have stepped up and did that, but we stepped up with such a fervor and a passion that you immediately recognized. And that alone kind of dispels any thoughts I had that, like, why should it be us? No, it should be us. And the reason is you feel it in here, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and that's kind of it. It's
This was, I mean, honestly,
yeah,
everybody that's watching this or listening to this is exactly the I mean, I'm talking too much because we're recounting my career here, but
yeah.
this was it. This was our conversation. Lee is as fanatical for this stuff as all of us are. And actually, I have a
Um,
question about the like what's hot with
sure.
PNP
So
now? Like,
that's
what era of games are people
yeah. So
chasing
that's
right
the
now?
interesting thing that I can always bring to the table, and that local radio finds interesting that nobody in the
Yeah,
game like games get sold. Yes. Do you want to hear about just like you, I see the announcement of the game, the hype leading up to the release. But then, unlike you, I have a view
yeah.
into what hit, what actually did the thing. And as far as retro is concerned, it goes based on who is becoming 19 this year.
Oh,
What I mean by that is, when I started working at PNP, it was Super Nintendo, it was 16-bit, maybe starting with N64, but now you're going to feel old. It's Wii. The Wii
yeah.
is the nostalgic console coming out
Yeah.
when people who are now reaching a certain age where they have
The
that
Wii
expendable
was
money.
amazing, man. People
It's
people
yeah.
forget how incredible that console was. It was an amazing machine.
Well, like it opened up gaming to tenfold. Like people were
Yeah.
playing games that had never even considered. Grandma was playing Wii bowling. That's
Yes.
monumental. You can say what you
Yeah.
want about, well, I want realistic and I want my Call of Duties and I want my Halos and stuff like that. But
Well, the other thing
expanding
though
the
about the
industry
Wii,
is, yeah,
totally. But the other
yeah,
thing about the Wii is that it was physical media. And you couldn't just there was some digital stuff and you could download stuff, but it wasn't the crazy amount of online publishing that exists today where stuff gets
sure.
buried and the amount of crap I hate to say or just be
Whoa.
dismissive of it, but there's just a lot of junk
Yeah.
out there. And there was a lot of junk that was on the Wii. Shovelware was a term that we put out there, but
Got to
it
get
took a
that bag.
lot. Yeah, but it took a lot of effort to publish to a disc and a lot of expense to publish to a disc. So there was an element of curation, and because it was
Yes.
so popular and it sold so well, so many people tried their hand at making games for that machine. And because of that, there's a ton of titles on it.
Yeah, the other thing to mention is that like some of those physical titles, when people are coming into games, whenever my first video game console was a Sega Genesis, so
Hmm.
Sonic 2 and Echo the Dolphin is going to mean something to me forever.
Yeah.
But had my first console been the Wii that Grandma gave me for Christmas, and she doesn't know what a Mario is, and she got me a shovelware carnival game, and I was playing
Yeah.
skee ball when I was 6. That's my Sonic 2 and Echo the Dolphin. I don't
Right.
discredit any video game being that for someone. Just so
Absolutely.
happens that the Wii had a bunch of that.
Yeah.
The thing now, so yeah, like if we're talking nostalgia, we're talking retro, GameCube, Wii, PS2. This is what, and you can see it in the market values of these games, just as people get into them, or as they become important to that next generation that's coming in with the, hey, I want to collect those games I had. How much are they now? And realizing that they sold something 20 years ago that's now worth several hundreds of dollars. It happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Games are cool like that. Thankfully, in some cases we have preservation where there are cheaper ways to go play those games. We can talk about the Wii eShop and how the Virtual Console compares to the Switch now. And that just not. I'm not so mad that it's a subscription model. I'm mad that that means we don't get those titles as quickly as we did on the Wii when they were just
Yeah.
available for sale for $5. That's my
Right.
biggest gripe with it. For games preservation, and then also coming
Yeah, I
to from
think
a
we all
retailer.
have that.
Yeah,
Like we're
yeah,
we're figuring out the subscription thing, and I always talk about them as being incredibly consumer friendly because of the amount of choice that you get out of them, and they all make perfect sense. If someone's got a new machine and they're on a budget because it costs a lot of
sure.
money to get the machine, then yes, get that subscription. You're going to have tons of stuff to sample and play and jump into without even having to buy another game. But we all do
For sure.
miss the ability to own these cartridges and these discs and
Yes.
this collection, this media, and feel like we actually do own it. That is a huge contentious thing right now.
And that was kind of its own bubble, right? Like if I could speak about the kind of physical game bubble where at a certain point, let's call it the mid 2010s or whatever, the only games being released physically were those big games, those games that were for sure full price games destined
Right.
to sell,
Yeah.
fill up the shelves at your big box stores. And then, people came along like limited run games, like special reserve games. We're like, no, we're going to take indie games, we're going to cut them those deals, and we're going to do limited releases of physicals,
Which is amazing. Yeah.
which became the bigger, smaller publishers, I like to call them, being like, no, let's compete for those indie licenses, and everything can get a physical release, which at face value is excellent. Yes, if you, like I said, if you love that Carnival game on the Wii, being able to own that disc will mean a lot to you. If there's a certain indie game you like that you have digitally, but man, you wish you could hold it in your hands forever and physically hand it down to your children at a ceremony or whatever the heck you're going to do with your physical games. Um, that's great, but then there became this sinister thing where, well, now
Oh, it went
games are just
so
being
expensive.
made,
Yeah.
well, that and games just being made to become physical games,
Yeah.
which is something I kind of noticed, which we've kind of moved past now. But in all of my years kind of working in retail, that was the only time where I said, this is not coming from the right place. And I won't name names on any of that because it's still kind of happening. And yes, physical games are great. Being able to own them is great, but there is the logistics, there's the practicality of
Yeah.
printing these games. And there's minimum order quantities on these games when they print
Yeah.
something. Unfortunately, if only 13 people want a physical copy of that game, they're printing 3,000 to meet that demand. So things move to closeouts, things get marked down, to insane levels. And
Here's what I
that
don't
to me,
understand, Lee.
yeah,
Here's what I don't. I
mm,
just got my analog pocket.
sure,
I splurged and I bought the damn thing, even though it's
yeah,
stupid. It's the
no,
it's the most beautiful
you didn't think that when you
stupid
bought it,
tech.
so
I love it, and I've been playing all weekend. I've been playing Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy Color on it, and it's just amazing. Like it's just great to re-experience this. Why aren't the console companies just making machines to take advantage of their previous libraries? Why don't they just make, like,
it's
if you want to circumvent piracy, just build another machine to go alongside of your existing brand new thing, or attach it with USB-C or whatever that lets you play your retro libraries. Why don't they just do that?
I was shooting something in the basement literally yesterday here. It's
Yeah.
basements. We love basements. My
Yeah.
buddy's looking, I have all the mini consoles set up, right? And
Yeah.
he's like, why haven't they made an N64 one of those? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
they pivoted. It's a subscription now. So instead of buying the little thing that has 20 games on it, you're going to pay a
Yeah.
subscription every month and you're going to get
Yeah.
the stipend of games. And hopefully they never remove anything from that service. I hope it's not like, no, this is expiring and it's going away for a little while because that would be
Wouldn't it
truly
just be
horrible. But
another revenue stream, though? Even if they went to
it's
Limited Run or one of these companies and said, look, we're not going to make these cartridges anymore, but we're going to build this little machine that will play the cartridges that people already have. And the stores like yours could sell these libraries, but here is a licensed opportunity for you to manufacture new reprints or new versions of these
sure.
games for this new market that we're going to have. We're going to take a chunk of that. That's going to be your business. Wouldn't that don't you think as a retailer that people would be excited about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the mini consoles were huge
Yep.
successes, right?
Yep.
Across the board. They should do more of them. They should put, they can do a SNES Mini 2 and put another 20 games on there and people will line up.
Yeah.
But I think because of the current state, the story where these are still current companies, and those libraries of theirs are something that they're not trying to resell you as new games, but they are very much interested in you playing Super Mario Brothers Wonder over going back and playing Mario World. We're going to offer it,
Right.
but we want you to focus on the new. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like these companies have been around for decades, right? Like
Yeah.
you'd be surprised sometimes you pick the brain of someone and realize that they had not thought of an IP that they like. Chibi Robo, let's talk about
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
boy Chibi Robo. GameCube
Yeah.
game, absolutely exceptional game.
Excellent. Yeah.
Nintendo seemingly forgot about it. They did a DS game and that was it.
Yeah.
When the Ziplash game came out, I was talking to someone in the Nintendo booth. It was basically like an intern brought up, like, "Hey, do you know that this Chibi Robo's got this cult following? You should kind of maybe do something with it." And that guy stated that as the impetus for that game happening. But like maybe there was a studio within Nintendo didn't want to make a side scroller, didn't know what they were going to do with it, and because of that guy bringing that up once, a Chibi Robo Ziplash game came to be, like it or hate it. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's because they could have just re-released the GameCube Chibi Robo and it would make bank. I'm telling you that right now. But
Yeah.
I think there is a focus on when it's Sega and Atari's a little different. Atari has re-released their catalog in a myriad of ways. Consoles
Yes.
with it built in, cartridges
Yep.
for something like the Evercade, um, and
Atari
then you have
50, the
yeah,
amazing Atari
PC is an
50.
option too. There's a lot of
Yeah.
not just emulation, but places where you can buy a lot of those old game collections on PC.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of I don't want to say do they not think it's important, but I think they're like, no, that's a side hustle to what we're focusing on, which is the new
Yeah.
games all the time.
And I get that,
Um,
but I feel like that it would be, you know, your point
it's
of
bold.
what's
Yeah.
hot is
Yeah.
at the 19-year-olds. You know,
Mhm.
what's hot is if someone's turning 19, this is where they're going to the store and they're going to collect that stuff. I think is a very apt one because I think if you're turning stores like yours into um, kind of like record stores or whatever,
Sure.
you're not losing people because I think what might be happening with games is that people leave it, you know, or they think of it as something from an era, and those games from that era are gone. But I think if you offer the avenue to play those things on modern technology, you don't lose that era. You sort of add value to people's initial ways into the medium. And then I think you grow from that. I don't think you lose from that. I think you grow from that. And I feel like the business does this great job of it's it's this amount of people every time, you know, instead of thinking, wait a minute, and your
Adding
whole
to it.
business,
Yeah.
yeah, and your whole
Yeah.
business, and to some extent, my whole business is like, no, 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 no. It's all valuable. It's all part of it. And so that demo isn't an age bracket. That demo is, you know, it's like Warner Brothers saying that there's no value in re-releasing their catalog, or you know, a music label saying why should we bring out In Utero again, you know? But they do that. They're remasters, which the video game industry is good at doing for sure and selling all that stuff. But there's also a value in having that initial print, you know, and I guess there is in video games as well. I feel I don't know. Like I am fully on board with taking a moment of your week to play something from the past and experience it. Like it drives me nuts that my kid is so obsessed with Roblox. She knows it too. I talk to her about it all the time. But she's a, you know, a typical she's 12 now, but she's one, you know, a typical kid in that age bracket that sees the immediacy and the ability to connect with their friends and on that platform. But I just look at Roblox and I go, every one of these ideas is from a better game. And I have that game in the collection. Let me go get that cartridge. You
Do your
can play where
homework.
this
Play
idea came
You
from.
can play eight
And she's
different
like, nah,
games, and at the end, you'll have a better appreciation for Roblox.
yes.
It's like the first time I played Minecraft, I was like, "This is incredible." If I had this when I was 8, that would have been it.
Yeah.
Like this would have been
Yeah.
the only video game,
Yeah.
and that's something that the industry has now. That like they can be all encompassing. That we're trying to. Everybody's striving to make the metaverse, where it's just like you don't need to go anywhere but Fortnite. This is the only game you
I
will ever need
know.
to play again,
Which is so
and
reductive as well, right? Like
it's
it's cool that those exist, but
yeah.
that can't be good for the whole industry if that's all that exists out there.
I mean, Harmonix is going to exist. They're making a like basically a Rock Band Lite to exist within Fortnite, and if that's the
Hmm.
only way I get a new Rock Band game, then
I was playing
the
that last night, actually, checking that
the
out.
industry is changing, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
wearing a Guitar Hero Live shirt right now. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's so fascinating. Like video games is not like anything else. Like when you would talk to people who come in the store, and they'd be
Yeah.
nostalgic for it, like, oh, I remember picking that up like at Sears when it came out. And I'm like, what if you said that about music? What if you listened to Stairway to Heaven once, and then
Yeah.
for
You're
20
so
years you
right.
never thought of it
Yes.
again?
Yes.
And then you're like, oh no, this does slap. This is really good. Why haven't I listened to it all that time? And I'm just
Yeah.
listening to what's on the radio. And both things are right. I know a lot of people, you know, depending on their age, who even work at PNP. It's just like, no, the new thing is the thing, and the old
Yeah.
stuff, if you go back too far, is too far back, and I won't touch it because it doesn't have X, Y, or Z.
I have that. I
Yeah,
have that line as well. And no offense to the super old classic Atari stuff, but
sure.
that stuff was very cool in its day. And I collected those cartridges. That's how I got my start back then. just playing all of those games. But it is hard for me to be like really sustained by that elementary gameplay. I am totally cool with 80s arcade stuff though.
Yes.
Like Robotron has persevered. That's a 1980 game. I just spoke with Eugene Jarvis on the podcast not too long ago. Brilliant genius of a creator in the video game space that not enough people know who he is. But I just talked to him
Said a
about
lot, but
building
a lot of
Robotron.
people. Yeah.
Oh my God. I know it's
Yeah.
crazy. But that has persevered. And there's lots of games that like Qbert is a masterpiece and Defender and, obviously Smash TV. Pretty much anything that Eugene touched, but there's lots of really, really permanent Joust, Pac-Man, like stuff that Space Invaders even that you can play today, which are just as fun as they were back then. But I also do understand that some people, there was a real contentious discussion around this around with music with new bands and indie bands and classic. I used to be so offended by classic rock when I was in university because I was huge music consumer and I listened to all the stuff. I worked at a record store, actually. That was one of my favorite jobs, and so I was up on everything new that was being released and wanted to support all the new stuff. And I did hear Stairway to Heaven at every freaking party I went to and all the time on radio. I was like, I've heard Led Zeppelin enough. Thank you very much. But so I get that. Like you want to hear the new stuff and you want to support the new bands and the new artists and all that stuff. And I think that is applicable to games to a degree, especially a lot of these indie people that are struggling for stuff. But man, when you play Pizza Tower and then you play Wario Land, it's like, wow, there's a direct connect. If you like Pizza Tower, go back and play some of those Wario
Where it
Land
began.
games because they're
Yeah.
incredible.
It's let's be real. Some people do not care to do that. Though like there's so
Yeah,
I've come from some film studies in university and stuff like that, and like finding out where these techniques came from will influence how you watch movies for the rest of time. But
right.
there's a lot of people who are just like, I'm fine with my stuff that was made for me and my generation, and I
Yeah,
totally get that.
yeah,
Um, I just happen to be someone from, when it comes to video games, at least, I'm from that period of time going into the 16-bit where we're taking off. Like this is different. This is post Crash. This is post 8-bit.
yeah.
We're moving into something real serious here with 3D
Yes.
graphics and stuff like that.
Thank you,
And it
Nintendo.
just, yeah, and it's man, there's so much fascinating stuff in those episodes that people are gonna come across. You don't. It's one of those things where you don't realize you missed it, or you don't realize that you saw it the first time until you see it again, and you realize, oh no, there's a moment, and I think it's Joe Satriani and Steve Vai are sitting there, and their
Yeah,
music was in F1 for like the
yeah,
PlayStation or something like that. It's just like,
yeah,
hey, that's
yeah,
cool. Like
yeah,
that's not, with the CD now you can put really good sounding music in these games, and like Kelly, I think, just asks, would you ever consider scoring a game? And in my brain, I'm thinking about that behind the scenes footage of Steve Vai just cranking out the Halo 2 theme just the first time. I'm like,
yeah.
that's incredible. So I go looking for that footage on YouTube, and it doesn't exist. The original posting of it from Bungie or whomever it was, just it got swept away, and thankfully someone archived it and re-uploaded it.
Mm.
And right then and there, like there it is. This is why Electric Playground needs to be. It's
Oh
cyclical.
man.
It's all one big story.
We
And just
we
like
were
we're
there
discussing
for a lot
today.
of those
Yeah,
moments. Yeah, we
yeah.
were definitely we had this distinct privilege, and I tried to impress upon everybody that worked on the shows that this is a real like we're ambassadors for the business and our collaboration, and
Yes, yeah.
like we need to approach all of these opportunities with respect. I didn't know about the permanence of all of this stuff, though. I just knew that
Oh, yeah.
the opportunity was very special and singular, and that was the energy that was in the show. I think everybody totally picked up on that responsibility. I think it's fascinating watching those Streeter pieces too that Kelly Benson used to host as well in our early stuff, where people just would have no clue what the hell we were talking about at all. And I think about that as new content. I think it'd be pretty fun to do some of that stuff out there with people because I think there is a much bigger appreciation for what video games as a medium has done. But back in those days, Kelly would be out there and she, do you know what a Bandicoot is? And like nobody had ever heard of Crash Bandicoot or
Yeah.
anything like that. was very funny.
That's maybe the most insane thing is like the actual odds are now if you approach anyone on the street and ask them about have they played video games in Canada at least the answer is
Yeah.
yes, and like that
Yeah.
was not the case in
No.
1997 for sure. You had to
No.
pick your battles with who you were approaching for damn
Yep.
sure, but
Oh, it
yeah.
was so fun to put all those together. I have a few more questions. Let's just rattle through these here a bit. Jedi Mike W from Twitter asks, any plans to post the old reviews on the Run episodes with Scott and crew? Those were such a comfort to watch for me. And the answer is yes. We're doing a chronological delivery of everything, and so every week we're going to start with season one and just keep plowing through, which means we'll do in the course of a year, we'll get through 4 seasons because we have four 13 episode seasons on deck. And then we did 13 episode seasons for a long time. And then we got into, I think, some 26 episode seasons and some 39 episodes of 52. And then eventually we went daily. And before all that happened, reviews started as its own show. So we'll have reviews. I don't know when, but it'll be quicker than originally it happened because originally we'd have 13 episodes and then they'd replay for a year or a year and a half, and then we'd have another 13 episodes. So it's not going to work out that way. We're just going to keep rolling every week. And then I don't know what happens when we have daily shows to post, but we've got some time to get to that. I know somebody did the math on my Facebook page that it would take 76 years to do every episode as a weekly premiere.
Well,
So that gets a bit
I'm
nuts.
turning 35 this week, so I'll be
And we
Bilbo
signed on for
Baggins by the time it's done. Yeah. Uh,
What's crazy though is that by the time we get into all of this, the stuff that I've been working on with my content, because I've been to every E3, which is crazy. Like our first episode is about explaining what E3 is, and we were at the 2019 E3 shooting content, and it was a great show. And I did a whole thing about how can PlayStation not be at E3? It really isn't E3 without PlayStation. But by the time we get past all of this content, all of those early YouTube things that I kind of pivoted to will become part of the classic content at that point as well. Because I've still been interviewing and visiting and doing all of this stuff since then. So yes, all of the reviews is definitely in the works. Given how close-lipped, this is from Blair Farrell, given how close-lipped many studios are nowadays to keep secrets and squash leaks, do you ever see a day when you or someone who follows in your career path getting the same studio access that you did with EP? I do, but it's going to take some real effort and it's going to take some real trust. And it's about building those bridges and really kind of explaining the why it matters of it all, and not easy. But I do think that things are going to change. I feel like the way that games get covered these days is really reductive and often negative. And I think, honestly, the act of doing this together and sharing these moments, I'm really hopeful that a lot of people across the industry will watch that and say, no, there's a different way to communicate around this stuff. And so that's my hope. We'll see. Cole says,
that's a tough question, right? Like, because never before has there been so many people working on games, and that leaks could be so devastating,
yeah,
not just to particular things about the game, but to the whole team working on it. Like we saw with, Grand Theft Auto 6. It's like, one of the biggest studios ever. Like, play him a small violin. It's like, no, there's people grinding on that game that we're gonna, have a party and show it for the first time, and for it to get taken away from them sucks. But maybe EP is a place, as we saw in classic EP episodes. Why can't it be like that? Why can't we see those exact people and the very granular thing they are working on, and have those people, instead of them tweeting that they're disappointed that their stuff leaked, get them to be able to voice their opinion and, say, there's a question you ask, and it's usually like an aside in a lot of the episodes, but you're like, what's the story of this game? And I'm like, that's the most open-ended, best question I think you can ask anyone at any level of game development. It's something I would certainly, because the answers you get are so varied. Because they're telling you what the game means to them. What's the story of this game? Do you mean literally, or do you mean, why am I here working on it? Why do I care? And I think as long as people understand that, uh, that there is a way forward for kind of bringing back that conversation around games and it
Yeah.
not having to be so guarded, not having to be worried so much about backlash on every little thing. But easy for me to say I sell games. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. No,
yeah,
it really has shifted. And uh it shifted, and I think that there is some real beauty to the fact that the voice of the player has become so valuable and important to the video game industry. Um, and they are part of the collaborative process, and I think that's great, and I think that's what the platforms kind of allow for. But I honestly think that there is a path forward to kind of do that with more respect and acknowledgement. Like I think not everything is going to succeed, and we're going to have stuff like the Suicide Squad game coming out and be so bloody contentious and such a um I don't know. It's like a flag in the ground for a moment in our
yeah,
industry, you know. Um, but people did really try to build something valuable in play there, and there are a lot of people that really do enjoy it. So even if it's not what many people expect it to be, I'm one of them, or it didn't deliver on everything that it could be. It doesn't have the heritage of the studio or whatever. There's still something positive to learn from its development. And I think there will be a lot of good things that come out of that game launching, even if that game itself is perceived as, not necessarily a good thing for our business. And I think if we can have more conversations that circle around the perpetual education that the effort required to build these games provides to
sure,
the community
yeah,
and to the player, the better. And it should be from a place of respect. I mean, on the movie side, even Madame Web, they tried something there. It's easy to just say, this is crap. It's so easy to say that. And we, as critics on our shows and, in the wider spectrum, um, I think we have to do better than just this is crap. It's fun to say this is crap. It's fun to have a conversation and say this is crap, but there's more to this. There's more to examine in all of this. And there's a way to do it, I think, with an understanding that a lot of people worked really hard to get to a point. And if it's disappointing and or it is crap, I don't know. I feel like we as critics have to find a way to express it in a way that is supportive of the next thing that is going to come out of the debris field of something like that.
even in the so like in the reviews of the run segments in EP, based
Yeah.
on what you're saying here, there's a lot of times when let's say Tommy's being reductive on something, and
Yeah.
it's a sticking point for him, and a lot of times it would be uh, cartoony graphics. It'd be like Star Fox 64. He loves it, hates the characters. Ace Combat 2, right up his alley.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a way to bring your personality out in that when someone at my work says a game that I am enjoying is trash, I'm
Yeah.
understanding what they mean by saying that.
Yeah.
And I think that as long as you're backing it up with that constructive criticism, you're saying specifically why it made you feel that way, and then wrap it up with saying it's crap.
Mhm.
It's all part of it. It's tough. It's so tough. I don't.
Well, and those
My
opinions are
hot
all
takes are
valid.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they're all valid.
yeah. Yep.
And they also, they represent a viewership portion out there. I just, and God, I've certainly been dismissive and flippant on comments that I've made about games. I've certainly just hauled off and said something's crap and don't buy this and they've been pissed off or whatever.
Sure.
But over time, though, I started to recognize the effort that is in this. And nobody's out there trying to build something crappy. They're really trying to throw themselves at this thing. And you know, let's use Madam Web as
Or Madam
an
Web.
example here. Like people worked
Yeah.
really hard on visual effects and scoring the music and putting all the pieces together. And the end result is is disappointing and not up to par with the best stuff that's out there, and possibly incredibly damaging to the studio and all kinds of other things. But at the same time, people did try a different take and try to do something, and um, and there is a plus minus on whether you want to invest because people try. Like, the world is harsh, and there is meritocracy in terms of
Yeah.
expenditure out there, and people want to support good things. It's great to see Dune 2 being supported right now. Um, but I think as critics, though, because, and honestly, all I have is my own perspective, and my perspective isn't just me in a silo by myself writing out my thing and blasting it out there. And I'm not saying that there isn't value in that. My perspective is I've assembled a apparatus of people to go out and collect all of this content, work with all of these studios, and get to know them as individuals and people. And I know how hard it is to make anything. And so I can't exist not knowing that. I do know that. And so I have a lot of appreciation for the efforts of anything. And certainly I get pissed off, and like, I'm really disappointed in the Halo show. It's really not the Halo experience that I have when I play the games. And I want that. And I think about what the Last of Us show did, subverting my expectations right from the beginning and showing us another angle on the whole mythology, and then taking different paths to bring me aboard with the visual and the narrative directions that they're going in with the show. Halo is not doing that, but they've hit a couple of moments where it's pretty darn cool. But I see the efforts, man, and I have to include that in my commentary. And I don't know if other critics. God, and I don't want to sound so egotistical, but
No, no,
I
no.
just I feel like people should, I don't know, think about that at least. Think about the efforts that people put into this stuff as
One of my
groups out there.
favorite one of my favorite YouTube genres right now is Starfield is disappointing.
Yeah,
And there's no short supply of 5 hour long video essays about every granular thing in that game that someone wishes Bethesda did something different. And the discourse on
yeah,
that got so toxic that
right.
people at Bethesda started speaking out, started commenting on Steam and being like, "No, space is boring. You don't understand." Or the
Yeah,
writer being like, "Games are hard, and you set out to make one thing, and another thing happens." And you can
yep,
read between the lines and stuff like that. And I do not, armchair game developer, right? So like
yeah,
I played 100 hours of Starfield, and not because I liked it. I
yeah,
played it because I want to be part of this conversation. But then I see, there's a teeter-totter effect. There is, here's my 5 hour video essay. Why wasn't this better? Here's my 5 hour video essay. Bethesda's trash and they shouldn't make games ever again.
yeah,
And
right. Yeah,
there's a medium to be had. I definitely don't wish that. Bethesda's made some of my favorite games of all time.
exactly.
Let's be real here, people. And like, it's you know it's going to be it's so hard to kind of really speak on, especially from my point of view. I'm not a critic. I'm not just a person who kind of plays them, right? So
Yeah,
um it's tough, especially if you're looking at it the way you're looking at it in the scope of video games history. You're not reviewing this game,
exactly.
you're thinking, I have a relationship with this person who ended up being on this game. I know they work hard. I know this aspect I don't like about this game wasn't their choice, something like that. um and that's it's disappointing.
And,
I'm
and
willing
it
to
is
say
my
it's, yeah.
unique situation, and it's not always just
Hmm.
about the individuals or the people that I know across the business. I just know from my own experience. Like, we just, we did our best as a group, and it's freaking hard. It's hard to make a thing, anything, but it's really hard to make a string of ideas as entertainment and project those out there and pull it off. It's very hard. It's a crapshoot, and all of the little different contributions. There can be great sort of beautiful moments from each one of those contributions, but and sometimes they mesh, and sometimes little parts work, and sometimes they don't mesh at all, so it's all up and down, and so I'm acutely aware of that as a builder of this stuff. It's really hard. So that always is in my mind. I try to respect the people that work to pull this off. And the other thing, I get accused of being soft on games often. I hate even bringing this up because I don't think that I am. I think that I have a real love of the medium. And I don't think EP would exist if I didn't, if I didn't really genuinely love games in totality and respect games. Like I'm not a like a my favorite genre, I think, is like the third person action adventure game where I can see my character and I can do all kinds of like I love Arkham and Uncharted and Assassin's Creed and I just love that genre. But I'm not beholden to only that. I love sports games and RPGs and other types of things, and I can holistically see. And even before EP, I consumed it all. I would spend $300 a month on video games on all the different platforms, and my girlfriend, who's my wife now, was very tolerant of my obsessions,
Really, yeah.
and totally I saw that I could see this stuff, from I don't know. I guess I was kind of I, I was supposed to do what I'm doing. I
There you
could
go.
see this world being a lot more interesting and elaborate and somebody's RPG take on this medium was going to be just as fascinating to me as playing NHL on my Genesis, and if I didn't feel about all of the games like that, like if I was only a Halo guy or I was only a Minecraft person or whatever, I don't think EP would have happened.
Absolutely not. No, it's
Yeah.
the first thing that's apparent is just that this is a love of the whole industry, having episodes devoted to just hockey. There used to be 6 hockey games coming out in the same
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And you can do an episode devoted to that, and then reviews on the run. We're going to tell you which one of these games that we talked to the people who made them, which one of
Yeah.
them is actually the best and worth your money, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way that like YouTube is very much everybody's got their lane or a few lanes, but you're
Yes.
not expecting any one person to play your third person action game, but also have an opinion of what Japanese puzzle games are hitting mobile. Whereas
Exactly.
EP is something that would include the entire breadth of that. And
Yeah.
that's
And
how I approach video games as well. So yeah,
totally, man. And
it's all
so
good.
yeah, and because we weren't just like a specialist, none of us were in any one of these things, there's going to be a lot of, clumsiness around terminology and I remember this is funny, but it's later on in the run when we were on G4 and Jose Sanchez became a part of the team because he was on the G4 forums back in the day, and he was such a huge fan of our work, and just a fountain of positivity in the threads and the forums and all that stuff. But and he was also a huge wrestling fanatic, and I remember there was a lawsuit
Happens to the best of
between
us.
the World Wrestling Federation and the World Wildlife Federation or whatever, and it was WWF had to change, and so they had to the WW took off the F one year, but they were still the WWF, but they took off the F on their logo. And Tommy and I didn't know anything about wrestling. We're fans of wrestling, and we were
What
reviewing
happened?
these
Yeah.
wrestling games, and we just called them. Well, we've got WW Evolution or whatever it was called, and we've got WW whatever the other one was called, and and
It's like an
and
incomplete URL.
yeah, and we totally forgot the F part, but we're like, well, it's what it says on the cover. But we could feel the face palms from the wrestling fans watching the content, and we read all of Jose's stuff on on the forum. It's like, oh my God, you guys. And then eventually we asked Jose to be a production assistant at some events, and then we got invited to a wrestling thing, and like we didn't know who these people were, and we said, Foobs, would you want to do the interviews? And he put on a suit and he did his first interviews on the red
Nice.
carpet for us, and he was just a yeah, I love that guy. So it's just been amazing. I think we could go on
We're going to
forever,
read a
my friends.
question, and we
Yeah.
interrupted you there, but you were about to read them.
Let's do this one's from Jason Scarce, and he says, "Does this mean the uncut review of High Heat Baseball will finally be officially
I had the same
uploaded?"
question. Yeah.
Eventually, a lot of the uncut stuff is going to be up there, but let's get through the episodes. Let's celebrate all the work that all of us put into it, into each one of these things, and then I have a feeling that things will accelerate as we start this process, and we'll start to figure out new ways to grow. PNP is kind of the first partner on the team, and obviously the fine folks at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. I expect that we'll probably bring on a couple more, but at the same time, I don't want this to be the only thing that EP is putting out there, right? This is a part of our weekly production, but we're going to be doing new stuff and new interviews and new content on a continuous basis. There's new things that are coming out that I still want to cover and talk about. And there are new things that are in the works as well. So we're trying to figure it out. But I think committing once a week for now, and then let's see where this goes. Let's see how we grow this, and the end result is that and I think Lee and our friends over at PNP and at the school for sure, and whoever else we might be able to bring aboard, we want to get it all out there, all of the raw interviews and stuff, the longer pieces. Because Lee's right, we would interview people for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and we'd use 3 minutes of it in the show. And there are lots of really interesting discussions. I remember visiting Richard Garriott for the first time at Origin in
Or
Austin.
British. Yeah.
Hey, Lord British. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I honestly, I hadn't even really played the Ultima stuff. I was more of a console player than a PC player, but he was so fascinating. And we had a good 30-minute conversation, which ended up becoming 3 minutes in the show or 4 minutes in the show. And I can hear the groaning of my cameraman with his heavy camera on his shoulder shooting
This
the
man's just
long
talking
interview.
about video games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're just rapping. I'm getting to know him like this,
Yeah.
and it just was going on and on. And he's like, he just shut the whole
Well,
thing.
he's filming history. He didn't know it.
Didn't know it, and those
Yeah.
freaking cameras were so heavy. Now I'm using a freaking Osmo Pocket 3 every once in a while, and it's this big. It's insane. It's insane what we have as technology. You kids, you
Technology.
just don't
Yeah.
know how lucky
Don't
you are to
understand.
have all this stuff. It's
I think
crazy.
in the very first episode, Peter Molyneux or someone is just like, they keep making new boxes and we're just trying to keep up or something like that. Like he's on the E3 floor and he's just like, I still can't make that tree grow in real time in Fable or whatever he's complaining about. It's just
Yeah.
incredible stuff. And it's, yeah, I don't know. We could talk forever about video games.
Well, let's do this again,
Yeah,
Lee. I wanted to
my
kind of
pleasure.
get us together. I wanted people to kind of see that, like if I was based in Winnipeg, I'd be coming and shooting at your store. I want
Sure.
people to see that this is a symbiotic partnership, and honestly, it's such a weird, singular thing. It needed a partner that really could understand why we're doing this. I love that you offer. It's amazing that the Wii is like the hotness at your stores
It's,
because
hey, love it
we're
or
going to
hate it.
be there
That's where we're
covering
at.
all
Yeah.
it's every week.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a perfect fit for a lot of the people that are digging into the classic stuff that you guys deliver, because every week you're going to be able to see pieces with the creators that are doing all of this stuff.
Nintendo just announced an Endless Ocean like remake, right? They're like, we're putting it
Yeah,
out physical. We're bringing Endless Ocean back, and people are like, what? And it's like, no, 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 no. Endless Ocean had two games on the Wii.
yeah,
There it is. That's all it is, man. It's been incredible to watch over 15 years. Just that go from 16-bit throughout, have the clientele change, and then at some point have people that I was working, they came in, they were 19, now they are grown up with kids who are looking to shop for video games. It's the independent game store experience, and I love having
I
been a
love
part
it.
of it. I love that this is where it's kind of led us. Of course, pnpgamesonline.com is where you can come show us some support. We have
Yes.
free shipping over $65 in Canada and the USA. We have a coupon right now, EPN-PNP, for $5 off. Depending on when this podcast goes up, if it's not Monday, we'll extend that coupon into whenever it needs to. For
Cool.
$5 off, of course. And then, March 23rd, come visit us in the store in Winnipeg, too. 915
Yep.
McLeod, 2609 Portage, 160 Meadowood Drive. Come on now. We've got
I'm gonna
game.
eventually get out there. I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to meet some of the employees of PNP and also some of the
Absolutely.
customers that come in. That'll be so much fun, and we'll
Awesome.
definitely do this again. It's a perfect fit, and I'm so grateful that you guys are on board with this, and I can't wait to launch this. I can't wait to talk more about it. And yeah, thank you so much. And we're going to come up with lots of other kinds of ways to collaborate as well. Like this, I think
Sure.
we're both seeing as just the beginning. So make sure you're following PNP on their socials and you sign up for an account with their website. I'm going to be tweeting out about deals and opportunities.
Sure.
And, buried treasures have been a huge part of our content for a long time. And I think that there's some really great synergy with some of the stuff that we can do with that. But Lee, thank you so much. Please thank all your colleagues at PNP for me.
Yep.
This was great. Sorry for talking your ear off. This was I didn't know where this was going to go, but it always is a weird trip down memory lane, and it's going to be like watching my home movies every week for the next several years. It's going to be crazy.
It's really like I am watching someone else's home movies, just like commentating on them, like I know anything at all what I'm talking about. But I'm like, I know all these faces are popping up. I'm like, I know these people. It's Ken, the gun in GoldenEye is named after that guy.
He's such a great dude. Ken is amazing. I'll definitely. I won't spoil that, but I'll be reaching out to friends that I have out there. So, thank you, Lee. Make sure you're following PNP Games wherever they are, and you're supporting us and bringing this content out if you start buying your games from them, because they are supporting the classic EP content. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, my friend. We will see you soon, and until then, play forever.